Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Honeydew Me. I'm Cass.
And I'm Emma.
And we're
this is our
excited you're
podcast.
here.
Yeah.
Both of those things. Very much so.
Just two little comments from us.
Yeah.
Welcome to another week of Honeydew Me. We are diving into a topic today that has been long awaited with this specific guest, and we're very excited.
Yeah, we're talking about toxic masculinity, which I feel like has come up in episodes before. I feel like, it's infiltrated so much of our lives. And we talk about sex shame and sexual identity and just so much with Zachary Zane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Author of the book coming out called Boyslut. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It literally takes your breath away from like the first three sentences. So that's what we're hoping to do with this interview as well. He's awesome. The perfect person to talk about all this shit with. And we go into like personal examples too from our lives. So
it's very fun. Yeah, Emma's had some head-on experience with toxic masculinity lately in like the grossest way.
Such an eventful couple of weeks, but like in a very like textbook definition of I pissed you off, so now you're a raging cunt. Them, not me.
Absolutely. Fucking A.
But it's just so interesting to get a take on that.
That reminds me, I feel like I've read 2 books in the last 2 days because I'm sick right now and I just haven't left my bed. And they not a fan, so I won't specifically talk about the titles. But I will say that one of them, I was so embarrassed to put on my Goodreads because it just looks like the silliest, like romantic book. And I found it on TikTok and they showed an excerpt and I'm like, that looks kind of fun. It's like watching reality TV. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to benefit me in the long run, but it'll benefit me right now. And it's just so cringy. But then I was like, no, I don't need to be like worried about being judged for liking this thing that is typically associated with being a woman, all of that kind of stuff. So I did it after my husband forced me to. I even downloaded a different reading app, and I'm like, I'll keep track of it there.
Oh my God.
Which is just
don't
so
put it
dumb.
down.
But I can't not. I did it. It's towards my reading goal this year.
Oh my God.
But yeah,
That's
it was
so funny.
I can't even remember what it's called. It's fucking called like Hating the Boss or something stupid like that. It was so
And
silly.
you loved it, you're saying.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Does it relate at all to sexual shame or toxic masculinity?
Yeah, both of the books I read,
Okay.
just toxic masculinity all throughout. Just horrible men.
Peppered in.
Horrible.
God.
Yeah. So,
you know what, at least in my opinion, doesn't have any toxic masculinity from the main character? The show I just finished, which you'll be so excited about, Fleabag.
Oh, I've seen that. I watched that years ago.
I know. I just finished it this last weekend because I've been alone and packing and stuff. So I finished it and oh my God. What a show.
What a show. It's like my mom's favorite show.
It's so good. Did you like it?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
The first season came out in 2013, I think. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. But it's a good one. It's a good one.
It was a good one. But I digress.
There's your media roundup.
There's your media roundup for this week. And we'll let Zachary Zane do the rest.
Yeah. We'll see you on the other side.
Goodbye.
Bye.
So my name is Zachary Zane. I write the sex and relationship advice column at Men's Health called Sexplain It. I also got a new column at Cosmo called Navigating Non-Monogamy, where I share all the mistakes I've made in my non-monogamous journey and what I've learned from them. But most importantly, I have a book coming out on May 9th called, hold on, I have to always hold it up, Boyslut, a Memoir and Manifesto. And I know we're going to be talking about this a bunch, but it's about how to overcome sexual shame. And I write it through a very bisexual, kink positive, sex positive, and polyamorous lens. And I'm very, very excited to get that out in the world. It is raunchy, it is graphic, it is explicit, it is funny. And hopefully it's unlike any other book you've ever read.
Yes. Oh my God, we are so excited. You're an amazing writer, by the way.
Thank
Cass
you.
and I have
appreciate
been
it.
extremely captivated by what we've read thus far.
Good.
We
Glad to hear it.
are so excited to chat with you today. And we're sure 100% positive that sexual shame is going to totally wrap in to our topic that we want to discuss today. But we want to start with defining toxic masculinity and then going from there into a
Ooh.
plethora of questions.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's one of those things where it's like, you know it when you see it, right?
Uh-huh.
But I really think it's these harmful stereotypes that we have about masculinity that actually hurt men and women and non-binary people. I feel like often we always throw the word toxic just in front of masculinity in general, and I don't think that's the case. I
Mm-hmm.
think it really has to have a negative impact on your behaviors are negatively influencing the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Is how I'd kind of loosely define it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition. Do you think it's something that just cis het men perpetuate, or is it something that all of us have a tendency to perpetuate?
No, I mean, gay men absolutely do it as well. And like, even in the gay community, we often talk about like femphobia, which is this idea where a lot of guys will be like, oh, I'm not into or don't hang out with guys who are effeminate, who wear heels, who wear crop tops. They're like, oh, I only want a manly man. I want a real man. It's kind of the language that's used. It's like, no, those guys are real men. They may wear crop tops and heels, but they're still men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in a way, there's certain, like, we've been conditioned, a lot of us, to actually think toxic masculinity is a good thing, right? So there have been like some like very high femme women that I've dated where, you know, if a guy flirts with them at the bar, they want me to go over and beat this dude up. And if not, they're actually upset with me. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, no, that's not who I am. I'm not someone who's going to get into a fight just because someone spoke to you. You know what I mean? Like, but they
Mm-hmm.
see this possessiveness, this anger, this jealousy as a form of like, oh, this is what love is. When I see it as, no, this is toxic masculinity and insecurity, and you believing that you own your wife or partner or girlfriend in a way that, like, no, that's not at all what I want. So in that way, like, women also believe in toxic masculinity, and specifically some women actually seek out men who are toxically masculine.
Mm-hmm. Why have we been told that that's valuable? Why is it that we seek that or can seek that?
Oof, that is a larger question that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm equipped to answer. You know,
Yeah.
that's the $1 million question right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been ingrained in so many ways. I also think it's part of the patriarchy. I think it's a lot of ways for men to control women. You know, if you praise toxic masculinity in the way, and a lot of toxic masculinity is about possession and controlling your female partner, um, and then you make it seem like, oh, this is a good thing, then it's a way for men to achieve and sustain power,
Mm-hmm.
power over women.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How is toxic masculinity linked to sex shame and all of these sexual experiences that we have?
God, I mean, in so many ways, but I think there's also this idea, and I kind of write about this in the book too, that like a lot of men have been left out of the sex positive movement. And you see it now. You have like magazines like Cosmo, which have completely changed since the 90s and 2000s, when their like kind of shtick was like how to please your man. And now their whole thing is like how to be a boss ass bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. That's incredible. But it's like men are not reading Cosmo. Um, and I think there's this idea that like men, let me think here. Um, I think there's this idea that like men kind of know everything about sex, or it's very simple to be good at sex. It's like all men are horny. All they have to do is just pound hard. They come immediately. When it's like that's not the case. And obviously, not all men are horny. Men struggle with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, insecurity, and anxieties. But then they're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to address these issues or see a doctor or talk about it to their friends because they fear that they're not going to be masculine. Um, and you know, these insecurities then manifest in really terrible ways in terms of treating. It's not just like they're going to be bad at sex. It's like they're going to treat their partners poorly when they feel emasculated. You know, when they feel like their masculinity is in being threatened, they're going to then attack and project and, you know, yell at women, beat women, assault women, you know, like not to go from 0 to 100 so quickly, but like these are the real ramifications of toxic masculinity and um, why it needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was in because your examples are reminding me of a current text thread that I had. So there was this guy who was a caterer at my work, and we had like friendly exchanged numbers. I told him I had a boyfriend at the time, but he was like, yeah, no, like you're just cool. Let's go get coffee. And then this was like last year, I just never really responded. I was like, like I don't need another friend at this moment. Anyway, months and months go by. He texts me earlier last week and just like a slew of inappropriate comments about how he could please me sexually. So like 0 to 100, and just saying how he can fulfill every fantasy I didn't know I had. And like, let me show you how a man treats a woman. And so I told him, I was like, this is completely inappropriate. And I like am not okay with this conversation. Don't talk to me again. And then it goes to have fun with your boring ass life, your fake ass friends, your douchebag boyfriend. Like it's the aggression response that you're explaining of, like immediately coming out of like the aggressive mind, or coming into the aggressive mindset when you're feeling rejected.
Yeah, it really, when you feel rejected, immediately going into this anger or rage. And I see that with just every woman who's ever has existed online. It's like I
Right.
get vitriol and hate for sure because queer man who writes a pretty queer sex column at Men's Health, which is a traditionally straight magazine. So I get some straight guys writing in, but like literally when I first received this, I was talking to some of my female friends and like, Zach, you don't even fucking know the bullshit that we do. And the flip from being like, oh, I want to fuck you. You're so beautiful. You're so attractive. And then like, you don't even respond, let's say for 20 minutes. Fuck you, bitch. You're cunt. You're actually ugly. You're fat. You're gross. I hate you. I hope you die. I hope you get rid. It's like, what the fuck? And like, even with that was just like, you didn't even wait like 15 minutes. Like you wanted like an immediate response. Like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Right. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying exactly. Like when you're saying, I'm sorry for going 0 to 100, but it's like that really is how it can happen in real life situations from unsuspecting people where you're like, whoa, that was bananas.
Truly.
Yeah, it's just
We
crazy.
had an episode, I think we focused a little bit more on consent, or it was about being extra sensitive and needing somebody to take like extra time, all of that kind of stuff, and how to like have the best sex that you possibly can as a sensitive person. We got some very angry messages calling us fucking bitches for being so controlling, and like how nobody's going to want to fuck us, and like all of this just in our DMs from like a real account. It wasn't just a bot account, or it wasn't just somebody like with no profile picture and no followers. Like it was a real guy, and it was so scary.
It is scary. It really is fucking scary and so unhinged. Jesus fuck.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Unhinged. Absolutely.
How else does insecurity I know this is a big question. These are big questions today.
I know. I'm like, I was expecting some softballs here. I was just going to do some fluff about my book, but it's early in the morning. I have to think. Okay, I can do this.
Well, these can be more conversations because I feel like there's a lot of different ways that this can manifest. But gender roles in the bedroom being influenced by insecurity and or toxic masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing I've noticed as someone who sleeps with people of like all genders, all sexes, everything, is I feel like women have often been conditioned to not express what it is that they want or what feels good, or they might not even know what they want. Versus, I sleep with gay and bisexual men, so I'm not sleeping with straight men. Well, sometimes I do, but for the most part, I'm not sleeping with straight men. And I think we've been so accustomed to via like Grindr and Scruff and all these like hookup apps to literally message 1,000 people a day saying exactly what we are into sexually. Like, this is my preference. I'm a bottom. I like giving head. I wear condoms or I don't wear condoms. I like it when you do XYZ. We are so explicit about exactly what we like, and we send that to no less than 100 random guys a day, and it's, saved as our phrases. So we know this. So when I sleep with men, I'm like, hey, what do you want me to do? They often know exactly what they want me to do. Versus the number of times I've been with women, and I'm like, hey, like, what can I do? Like, oh, what you're doing is great. Keep going. It's fine. I'm like, I know that's not true. I know there are things that you would prefer for me to be doing, but you just don't feel comfortable expressing it. Maybe you don't know what it is that you actually like. I have noticed that this is different for queer women when I sleep with bi women. They are more vocal about what they want. They have a sense of what they want. I've also noticed like in the kink positive spaces and the poly spaces, women tend to be more vocal and sure of what it is they want to articulate those things. And I wonder if a part of that also has to do with safety. You know, these kink spaces and poly spaces are really vetted, you know what I mean, in a way to making sure that these men are safe, that they respect boundaries, that they are communicative and honest about what they want, and really are there not to just fuck and come within 30 seconds and then kick the person out. But, and also, I mean, so much of, you know, male sexuality is learned from porn. So of course there's this idea that like going as hard and fast and jackhammering to smithereens is exactly what every you know, vulva owner wants, when of course that's not the case. And even if they do want to get jacked to smithereens, which plenty of women do, not immediately. That's not the first thing you fucking do, right? Yeah, there's a lot more to do to warm up to get to that point. I think there's also, I mean, so much of this is influenced by porn. And I talk about this in the book too, where it's like, I love rough sex. I love choking. I love gagging on dick. I love all the nasty shit you can think of. But like understanding that that's a specific type of sex, that everyone's not going to be into sex, and that's not the norm. You don't start by choking and slapping someone. This is a conversation that you have. You set clear boundaries. You set clear expectations. So it's not shaming these kinky or rough sex behaviors, but it's knowing that this should not be the standard. This should not be the norm. And I feel like for many men and for many, you know, teenagers now, where like this porn is just so rough and graphic, that like they think that that is the norm for sex, that that is the baseline of sex, and that's not the case. And I think that still all ties into this idea of like, if I'm a man during sex, I'm being hard and aggressive and rough, when it's like, that's not what constitutes manhood, and that's not what everyone likes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You said the word hard, and that just made me think about how toxic masculinity would be wrapped up in like boners as well, and the ability to get hard.
It's such a like ongoing joke where like so much of you know when like men reach a certain age and they start getting angry or midlife crisis, you know, and so they buy a Lamborghini that they, you know, they can't get hard, they can't have sex the way they used to, and they feel emasculated. But that joke, I think, does come from reality. You know, I don't think that's coming out of anywhere. And I think a lot of men, as they age, when they start, you know, your testosterone levels go down, your blood flow isn't as good as it used to be, and you're not able to get erect the same way. I think that's, you know, if you don't have a healthy relationship with your masculinity, with your sexuality, I think you can turn into a real asshole. I think that is true.
Yeah. If your masculinity is resting on your boner
and you don't have it, yeah,
probably find some more stable bases to.
And also the irony is just like, especially because I write for Men's Health, so many of the questions I get are about like erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. That's still 70% of the questions I write into the column, or how to get my dick bigger. And I don't answer all of them because that's all I'd be answering. But like, it's so funny with like erectile dysfunction. I'm like, there are so many medications right now that if you are just comfortable talking to a doctor and figuring it out, you can resolve this issue. This is such a simple issue to fix, but yet they feel uncomfortable just going to their doctors and like addressing it. When I'm like, my God, like you can fix this. You can fix most penis problems at this day and age. You know what I mean? Like, and yet they don't. And I'm like, dude, like, we live in 2023. We've kind of figured this out. Like take advantage of it.
There has been so much fucking medical funding into ED. Like I'm sitting here with endometriosis and no cure whatsoever, and I'm in pain daily. But there are a million fucking cures for your ED.
Oh yeah. It's actually quite bad how much money we've invested in this when we probably should have invested it into like other issues. But like it is a huge industry, and like especially now with stuff being generic. So you have places like Hims and Romans, which like literally do it online because now it's generic. So you don't even have to go into a doctor if you have shame. You literally fill out the survey. It takes 5 minutes and it's delivered to your door discreetly. They have like sublinguals now. So essentially it gets absorbed super quick, and it's not just Viagra or Cialis. It's a combination of various medications. So it works quicker. You're harder, longer, and fat. Like it's, again, they've invested gajillions of dollars into this. So we do have a solution, and we probably should start investing into other things as well.
Maybe just like $1 here and there would be nice.
Just 50 cents. That's it. Yeah.
Just put it in a jar and send it to me later. Yeah. So is the root of like having all of these options and not seeking any help for yourself, is that sexual shame? Is that being, I guess it could
Yeah.
be both.
It's toxic masculinity, it's sexual shame. It's all
Mhm.
it's all related, right? But it's this
Mhm.
idea that I shouldn't have to seek help. I
Right.
don't need help. This is something I should be able to do on my own. This is my manhood at stake. And there's this idea, yeah, that using Viagra or something means I'm less of a man. I can't do this on my own. So it's a
Mhm.
combination of sexual shame. It's a combination of toxic masculinity.
That sounds like every argument I've ever had with one of my partners. I shouldn't need help, so I'm not going to get it. It's like, okay, we'll
Great,
fight
thank
about
you.
it instead. Thank you. Like,
So fun. Just adds
mhm.
so much spice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So maybe we could get more into topics in your book and sexual shame. And um, I love how you're, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that I've already started reading it because it's not out yet, but I'm
No, no, yes, you
okay.
should have. Yes,
Amazing.
that's good. No, I
Okay.
love that.
Love it.
I love that you started with sexual shame as a kid and talking about like the OCD tendencies of like seeing everyone naked and feeling immediate shame about being like the child pervert because I didn't have OCD, but I felt like the child pervert constantly because I was constantly thinking about sex, which led into early masturbation and feeling shame about that. So I would love to start there.
Sure. So yeah, in my first chapter of the book, the first chapter, and I really hope you were laughing while reading this as well.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, yes.
But it's about growing up with OCD, and like when I was like 7 or 8, I'm in my therapist's office, and I had like my parents knew something was wrong with me, so like very lucky that my parents like sought out a therapist. A way that like a lot of parents were like judging her. I didn't know this until I was like interviewing her for the book. She was like, "Yeah, all my friends thought these were like childhood eccentricities you'll grow out of," and I was like over medicating you by putting you on medication, seeing a therapist. But like, no, I really think it saved my life.
Mhm.
But I had OCD and I couldn't stop imagining people naked, and not even in like a sexual context. I'd imagine like my peers naked, my parents, my old people on the street, and I'd feel such shame and I'd start crying. I'm talking to my therapist about this as I'm imagining him naked, and like I'm trying not to cry, and he's like, Zach, you're allowed to imagine anyone naked. There's nothing wrong with nudity.
Mhm.
Um, and once you believe that, you'll be able to stop imagining people naked. But because you think it's a bad thing, your OCD is telling you, oh, this is bad. Don't think of people naked. Now I'm thinking of people naked. And again, to clarify, it wasn't even a sexual thing. Like it really
Yeah.
was just like, oh, this is bad. I'm a bad person. And I kind of discussed this in the beginning of the book to be like, why was I having sexual shame at like 8 years old? And I actually came from a very sex positive family. I came from like a queer positive family. I have gay uncles on both sides of my family. We were not a family where like we couldn't see each other naked. If we walked in on someone, like it didn't matter. And yet, the reason why I give this kind of background is to show how, like, no matter how sex positive your family is, we just soak up these sex negative messages from society, right? It is so pervasive. It is so insidious. You pick it up from culture, your teachers, your friends, your peers, media, everything. So even though I didn't have this like traumatic moment with sexual shame, I still had so much sexual shame. So it's kind of to show how universal sexual shame is, and no matter how great, quote unquote, your upbringing is, you exist in the world, you're going to experience it. It's something that we all need to work through.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you talked about coming from a sex positive family and still having sex shame, because I think, at least in a lot of the conversations we've had, it's like people have had these really intense experiences that led to sexual shame, religious experience, like horrible family experiences, whatever it may be. And I think a lot of people also don't relate to that and are like,
Yeah,
so why do I still hate my body, and why am I still scared to ask for what I want? Like,
Mhm.
exactly.
almost like I should feel okay with it, but I'm not. So then there's like that type of guilt in there as well, that I think also
Mhm.
gets into like the body positive movement of like, okay, well, why do I still hate myself then? So
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
Mhm.
complicated and universal.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm. I love that you mentioned because like I read it, but like thinking about people naked or being nude isn't a bad thing. But even when you said it right there, I was like, yeah, huh. But it's like it's immediate, and like I know we're not our first thoughts, so I know I've grown out of, like thinking that being naked is bad, but it does feel dirty to think of other people in a way that like we've associated with being sexual, and then you feel like a shitty person.
It really is. One thing that I've heard recently, which I like, is like when you hear this voice in your head, like whose voice do you hear it in? Do you hear it in your parents' voice? Do you hear it in your pastor's voice? Do you hear it in your voice? But if you really hear it in someone else, like his voice, then it's not you. And I feel like with sexual shame, always what I try to say is like it's always someone trying to control you. That's what shame is. Shame is a means of control. If you feel like, oh, I can't do this, I shouldn't be doing this, that's like someone trying to control you. Whether it's like religious leaders, what's the men slut shaming women to try to control their behavior and to tether them to one man. But I always think with shame, it's like looking at trying to get to the root of it. It's like, why? It's always asking, like being like a 5-year-old who's being very annoying and being like, why is nudity bad? Who's told me that it's bad? And just keep asking why and why. And when you get to the root of it, you realize, okay, this actually has nothing to do with me. This is literally just larger society with these messages ingrained in me. But really trying to dig deep to figure out what the root of it is, so that way you can attack it and address it, and, and speak to it.
I love asking why, and I love asking, okay, what if that is true? And just
also like that's true. It's like, okay, so I am a pervert. Okay. Exactly. I do it consensually. I do it safely. I communicate with my partners. I make sure everyone loves exactly what it is that we're doing. I'm not hurting anyone. Okay. So I'm a pervert.
Wash my hands of this.
What's bad about that? Like, I'm enjoying my life. They're enjoying theirs. Everyone's enjoying it. This is a fun thing for me that I'm doing safely. Okay. I'm a pervert. Fine.
Exactly.
So for people who have not yet obviously read your books, it's not out yet, what comes of this shame? Boy, slut. What, at least for you, what came of this, and how has this like been a trajectory for your life and your experiences?
Like how did shame negatively affect me? Or
Yes.
How did overcoming shame?
I guess both. So we can start with, how did shame negatively affect you?
It's, I had a lot of shame around my sexual desires, also being bisexual. That was something that was very confusing. And when I was trying to figure out whether I was bi 10 years ago, oh my God, longer than that. How old am I? However many years ago.
Doesn't matter.
I remember Googling like bisexual man, and there was no visibility. Like the only thing that came up were like studies about like bi men having and spreading HIV. That was it. Or maybe the thing like 10 things to never say to a bisexual person. And then every bi man I knew in college came out as gay shortly after. So like, I was like, okay, even though I'm like egocentric, I'm not delusional. I'm like, I can't be the only man in the world with this sexuality. But what it led for me was, I hooked up with my first guy in college. 2 weeks after getting there, I was so drunk in the middle of him blowing me, I left to vomit twice.
Oh, God.
I had to reach that point. I was so nervous. And like that, and he was like, are you okay? I'm like, just keep going. It's fine. As I'm like running to the bathroom to puke and go back. And the next day I'm like, I don't think I'm bi or gay because I did not enjoy that. Well, it turns out if you get hammered and you're vomiting in the middle of getting head,
it's not as good.
Even if you're gay, you're probably not going to be like, oh, I loved that experience.
Amazing.
But then I kept hooking up with guys for like 5 years. And every time I would get blackout for like plausible deniability. But it's like, if you like doing this drunk, you probably like doing this sober as well. But I also knew how much like I loved women. I'd been heartbroken by women. I was dating women the whole time. And I knew my feelings toward them were genuine. And the sex I had with them, I was loving it. So I was just very confused. But this led to, the shame I had, like sleepless nights, anxiety, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, you know what I mean? Just like getting hammered in order to do these things and living I was not happy. You know what I mean? Like at its core, I guess, how did it negatively affect you? I was not a happy person. I was confused. I couldn't sleep. I did not like myself. It's not that I didn't like myself. It was just like everything. I couldn't enjoy life. Like I'd be kissing a woman. I'm like, do I actually like this? Or am I just gay and doing this because I think I should do this? I couldn't enjoy hooking up with guys. Like I was just all over the place and scatterbrained, and like that wasn't fulfilling. That's not a happy way to live. So in that way, sexual shame impeded me from embracing who I am. And when I was living this lie and living this confused life, like I was not happy. So that's kind of how it negatively affected me.
Right.
I was lucky that I was never one of those people, or not lucky, maybe that's not the right word, but just, there are a lot of closeted dudes who then kind of take their anger out elsewhere on other people. That was never me. I was more of a sad, confused, lonesome, confused in my room, take the anger inward type of person as opposed to anger outward. But, other men, there are a lot of studies that kind of show, this is book called By Men, By Women. So BI men, BY women. It's this researcher who like interviewed all these women who date bisexual men. And she was like, bi men are like better lovers. They're more egalitarian in their approach. They're more understanding. But this is with a huge caveat. It's only men who are out and have embraced their bisexuality. If you are closeted and you are lying, like that leads to that leads to anger, that can lead to assault, abuse, lying, cheating, all that stuff. So like from a larger societal perspective, like coming out and embracing who you are doesn't just affect you, it affects the people around you in your romantic relationships. And then I got into therapy, and this therapist really helped me realize I was bisexual. And I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but like essentially he showed me that bisexuality was a valid option. And not only was it a valid option, he was like, Zach, you're clearly bisexual. Like, is there something like I'm missing? Like, it seems so obvious, like to me, like, and I was just like, that stuff doesn't exist in men. And he was like, Zach, you're too smart to think that, was his response, which I thought was actually quite a good response. Yeah. But since coming out as bi, of course, we always have the It Gets Better campaign. It gets worse before it gets better. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that needs to be stated, where it's like, especially if you come out in a home where you get kicked out of your house for being gay, I actually don't necessarily recommend that you come out to your family when you're in high school. I think you should wait till you're in college, or wait till you have a support system, you're financially stable, because you don't want to be homeless on the street. But for me, coming out was challenging because I always thought like, oh, like now women and men will both want to date me, versus no women dated me because they thought I was using it as a stepping stone. They were afraid I was secretly gay, and they would ghost me. They would be freaked out. And then gay men were extremely condescending. They'd be like, oh, Zach, I was bi too. You'll get there. And I'm like, this does not make me want to date you or have sex with you. This makes me just feel like shit. Please stop talking to me. So I really struggled. I was like, fuck, like I put in all this work, finally embraced who I am. The world's my oyster. And it was like, nope, turns out that's not the case. But then over the years, I was able, like I moved to New York, and I like both found and started creating this like bisexual community. And it has been truly life-changing. Like that word is thrown around, but like being surrounded by other bi people, being accepted and embraced for who I am, not like women almost like bordering fetishization, which I'm fucking fine with being fetishized for being bi. That's hot. But like, but like women who specifically want to date me because I'm bisexual, when so many women still obviously refuse to date me since I'm bisexual. And since I've come out as bi, I've not dated a straight woman. And that's not even necessarily by choice. It's like they don't want to date me. So I've only dated queer, bisexual, poly, kink positive women, and it's amazing. And we have this understanding and this brace and this embrace and this love of each other. But like the bisexual community is still small. It is still growing. And like I'm so lucky. I live in Brooklyn, which is like the bisexual polyamorous capital of the fucking world. So I found this space. But I'm really working on creating new spaces and creating spaces that aren't just sex and kink focused. And that's been more of a challenge. Like even when I throw events, it's always sex parties, which is fun for me. I love bisexual sex parties. But for bi people who are monogamous or not kinky or not poly, there really are like very few spaces for them in a way that like I would like to create more physical spaces. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. There's, again, not wanting to spoil too much of your book, but there's a part where you do things that people have said to you and then how you've responded. And one of the ones that I really enjoyed was when somebody said, well, everyone's a little bit bi.
Because when I came out to my family, that was something that I had a lot of people say to me, even in my family. And I really liked your response to that. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my God, what was my response? No, I think when everyone says everyone's a little bit bi, I'm like, no, but you might be a little bit bi. I think that's what it is. Like, if you are
I do love that.
completely straight or gay, which
Uh-huh.
there are plenty, probably the majority of people are completely gay or straight, they're not saying everyone's a little bit bi. They're only saying this because they've definitely had some, same sex or same gender attractions. And maybe they are so fleeting, they don't necessarily want to date someone of the same sex or gender. Like, they just appreciate how beautiful they are. But again, like, if you're completely straight, you're not saying, isn't everyone a little bit bi? I think, right? Like,
Yes. I
That
agree.
is, yep.
but it's
That-
also, in your case, it's also sort of a way to diminish your bisexuality.
Mhm.
Where it's just like, oh, well, this is not that. Well, everyone's bi. So, like, you don't need to make it your whole deal. It's not your whole thing. And, like, yeah, you are attracted to women, but, like, so are we. We're a little attractive, but you don't have to do anything with that attraction. So,
Mhm.
in that regard, it's also a way of actually diminishing your experience, which is
Mhm.
not good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like a calm down. Everyone's a
Yeah,
little
it really is sort of a
okay.
calm down.
Mhm.
Yeah. What is the fear of bisexuality? Why is it that like the partners you've been with have been like, you'll get there, or like that's not real? Why?
There's this. I mean, I'm almost nervous recommending it because it's like a 50,000 word dense thesis that, like, why? But it's called the epistemic contract of bi-erasure. It's about why gay and straight people are invested in keeping bi people erased, and it came out in like early 2000s by this. I believe he's a gay researcher, actually, or gay lawyer. It was like, I don't even understand, like, because it's a thesis that he was. I don't even know what it is, but there's actually a lot of reasons why, like, societally we're invested in bi-erasure. But to answer your question more explicitly, I think a lot of it comes from fear. I think a lot of in the media, what we have is this trope of a bi man leaving his wife or girlfriend for another man, and then this woman being heartbroken and devastated and embarrassed
Mm.
and shame. And so when that is like a major kind of narrative or trope in media, you can't help believe that. So I think there is this fear that, like, oh, this man is going to leave me and I'm going to be left, crying by myself and embarrassed. So I
Yeah.
think that is often like a big fear. And yeah, I mean, it's when you date, like, the reasons why a lot of people don't date, let's say, bisexual people, comes from fear and insecurity, right? They're like, oh, he has double the options. He's more likely to cheat on me. And I'm like, oh yeah, because straight men have never cheated on their wives with other women. Sorry, I forgot that. Like, oh, it's like, oh, well, you've double the population. It's like, well, there's still 3 billion women. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Mhm.
that a straight guy can clearly cheat. But I just find it so funny that this narrative of, like, the way you're framing it is like, oh yeah, straight and gay people, they never cheat. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we can all cheat. Like,
Mhm.
oh, there are more options. It's like, there's still plenty of options. Do not
Mhm.
worry.
Well, yeah, that's
Um,
one of the first things you hear if you're in a relationship or you're coming out as bisexual. It's like, well, aren't you worried that like they're going to be looking around like while you're dating? It's like, I don't know. No.
it's like it's tough, and I think almost this stereotype almost creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where I know a lot of bi people are afraid to admit, like I'm bisexual and do need people of all genders in order to be happy. Like, that is why I'm polyamorous. I'm very open about it, but I am actually not satisfied just sleeping with one person of one gender for the rest of my life. That would be very unfulfilling for me.
Mhm.
And, like, I know a lot of people are embarrassed to admit this because it almost like perpetuates the stereotype that, like, oh, bi people are greedy or they need people of different genders to be happy or they're going to cheat on me. And my whole point is actually, I'm not cheating on you because I'm explicitly stating this is what my needs are. And I'm giving you the choice and the autonomy to be like, is this a relationship you want to engage in? And if you're monogamous, no, you don't. But I feel like because of this, a lot of potentially by people almost like deceiving themselves, like, oh, this is what I want, this is what I want, because they don't want to be the stereotype. And me, leaning into, I hate the phrase authentic self, but like leaning into my authentic self and being who I am and not being ashamed of it. And, like, yeah, in a way I perpetuate some stereotypes, but, like, it's also, I think there's an importance to differentiate between like positive stereotypes and like, or not positive, but negative stereotypes and neutral stereotypes. Like, there's nothing wrong with being slutty. Like, the issue is that like assuming all bisexual people are slutty is not accurate. There are ones who are slutty, there are ones who are happily monogamous. So just any assumptions and overgeneralizing a group, that's what's negative. But like, there's nothing wrong with being slutty. But there is something wrong with lying and cheating. And so those stereotypes I really work hard to disprove and be like, no, these are negative and these are not true. Versus the other ones, I'm like, okay, like there's actually nothing wrong with this. And I am this stereotype and that is okay. But please don't assume just because I'm this, that every single bi person you meet is also this.
Mm-hmm. Or that every other stereotype is also true about me.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
just because I fit one doesn't mean I fit the 17 others.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that gets overwhelming and complicated trying not to be a stereotype or fulfill a stereotype. But if that's authentic to who you are, it's like, I don't know, it feels like you can't win in other people's eyes, no matter what you do.
And you do just like, you're not representing the entire bisexual brand. And that's something I had to tell myself as one of the few people writing 10 years ago who really was representing the entire bisexual brand. Like, especially in the articles I was writing, there were very few bisexual men writing articles. Or like open out bisexual men writing about bisexuality. To this day, there are only a handful, you know what I mean? Like, at the time, I was so worried about like depicting the perfect bisexual. It's like the perfect bisexual does not exist. Like, we are like every other sexual orientation, you know, we are diverse in how we express our loves and desires and have sex.
Right. So you explained how your therapist validated, you know, bisexuality for you. What were other steps in overcoming the sexual shame?
It was talking to actually my brother. And I remember where we were like sitting down. I've been hooking up with guys, like different guys for like 5 years drunk. And I always would tell him my stories and we were close. And he goes, Zach, you know, like, you know, we were all kind of effeminate, like me and my brothers. He's like, you know, there were rumors about all of us being gay. He's like, you know, so I tried hooking up with a couple guys for a couple months. I maybe hooked up with 2 dudes, realized it wasn't for me, realized I was straight. Experimenting is valid, exploring is valid, but you've been experimenting for like 5 years. And it's been like countless dudes. At some point, you're not experimenting.
We're out of the trial phase.
Yeah, it's like a stable orientation. I remember making the joke being like, oh my God, I'm going to be married to a man. And on our 40th anniversary, I'll be like, thank you for staying with me as I continue to explore my identity. I still think I'm straight. Like, thank you. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to be that person. But I think he helped me in that journey. And I think, you know, part of it is, you know, I think what can be helpful and advice for other people, and it may sound ironic or like the oppositional to what I just said, but I almost wish I explored without this focus on a label. I was so confused as to like, am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bi? That I couldn't just enjoy the experience or like focus on it. Like, and I think if you're like obsessed with labels, you can't be present in the moment. So I wish I was like, you know what? I don't know what I am. That's okay. I'm living with this ambiguity. I'm going to explore, see what I like. And then if a label fits, be able to do that. So I think for people who are exploring or experimenting, one, if you're experimenting for more than 2 or 3 months and it's been 5 years, I feel like that's telling.
Yeah.
But 2, remember that if you explore and experiment, decide it's not for you, you're still 100% straight. That doesn't make you any gayer or any more bisexual. You just explored something. So being able to explore and experiment without initially labeling, I think, I think it'd be a really beneficial thing for people who are exploring their sexuality and trying to overcome shame.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think as a society, we really like labeling things. As human beings, we really like labeling things. And I've noticed that on social media, we really like labeling things. And then people get really strict on social media with labels and then like want to keep people out of those labels and all of that. And I feel like that's not necessarily happening in real life and like real social situations that people are having, but it is happening significantly. on social.
It's tough, like labels can be empowering and incredible. And now once I found the word bisexual, I loved it. I've embraced it. I've kept with it. I've kept it even when, like pansexuality came out. Even though I'm attracted to all genders, I still kept the word bisexual. I felt it resonated with me. So like, it's like labels aren't themselves the enemy. And sometimes people are very anti-labels. Like you can really feel a part of a community the way that I do now. However, it's for some people, labels do not work. So it's really figuring out what works for you, or labels at this time does not work. Maybe it will over the next few years. And of course, gatekeeping labels about who is genuinely bisexual, who's genuinely gay or non-binary or whatever it is. Like it's a difficult balance to walk, because I think like you want to encourage people who are maybe exploring to be like, this is okay. At the same time, there are certain like guys, especially now, who like go to these like queer sex parties who are like, oh, I'm bi, but do they almost label themselves as bi because they know like being a straight cis man in the space, like you'll get ridiculed and made fun of. But like bi and like I'll make out with a dude, but that's it. I'm like, no, you're just like not homophobic, and like women make out with women all the time. They're not bi. It's like a fine thing to do. And they're trying to use it because they honestly like want to be marginalized. I'm like, yeah, because being marginalized is so much fun. Yeah, ask anyone. But like, and so in those ways, you're like, well, I kind of do want to gatekeep you, because like you're not actually bisexual, but also let's say this guy's exploring his bisexuality and he may actually be. So it's like, it is like a tougher line to walk. Although I usually err on the side of it. Let's assume everyone's exploring and experimenting and let them in, and kind of have a good intention, but other people are not like, no, we're ruining our space because we're letting in too many people. So it is a fine balance to walk. I err on letting people in.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good side to err on.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on cases of like, I feel like it's happening a lot in social media as well, of people labeling others as queer and almost like forcing them to come out?
Yeah, that's messed up. Like everyone should be able to come out in their own time. And like realizing, there's been a few cases recently of being like, oh, this straight character played a gay character. He's not gay, shouldn't be doing it. Or why is this person queer baiting? And then they later come out as gay or queer. They weren't ready to do so. And I think people are right now misusing queer baiting. Like queer baiting is like clearly when a straight, like when someone is profiting off of gay culture. And you know what I mean? And I also don't think it's necessarily like the end all be all worst thing in the world. Like if you don't like that a straight man is playing this character, or like the straight man is on OnlyFans with like jerking off, but he's straight, like just don't watch it. Don't spend your money there. Like you have a choice to do so. But like often it's like queer baiting, and we hear it's like, well, it's people who are exploring their sexuality who might come out as gay later. And like, I think we should let them do that. And instead of labeling them so quickly or saying they can't do this because they're straight, they just might not be ready to come out yet. But I feel like there's been a pushback and being like, okay, what we've been labeling as queer baiting actually is not. But yeah, like I understand the desire for visibility and to have more role models in the space, but like we can't be outing people. We can't be forcing people to come out sooner than they should be. And there's been a few examples. I think it was that guy from Heartstopper. Is that the one that happened recently? He was like 19. I think I'm getting a little confused.
There was one from Stranger Things.
One from Stranger Things, where it's just like, it's like, God, also these guys are like 19, 20 or in their 20s. Like, let them come out. Like, Jesus. Like, I know they're in the, like, I feel people are very entitled to celebrities and feel like they can say or do anything to them. But I'm like, these people are still people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but yeah, I don't think it's good is my hot take.
Right. Is it with, Noah
Schnapp?
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, he did also. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. There was a guy from like Heartstoppers comes out.
Like because him and Will were kind of like, you could see those look. It's like, yeah, that's really.
He's like just now not a child.
Yeah, fuck.
Heartstopper star Kit Connor. Oh my God, why are these ads in my way? Heartstopper star Kit Connor comes out as bi, says he was forced. Kit Connor, who stars in the Netflix hit show Heartstopper, came out as bisexual on Monday. In a tweet, he said that he was forced to reveal his sexuality. Back for a minute, I'm bi. Congrats for forcing an 18-year-old to out himself. I think some of you missed the point of the show. Bi, the British actor wrote. We're just like, come on. Like,
It's
people... it's also remembering that social media is not reality has been very helpful for my mental health, and that like if people come for me on social media for whatever, I can just not look at it and my life carries on the exact same way.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
God, like it's messed up.
Totally.
As much as it can help create community and like, you know, obviously how we share a lot of information about sex education is through social media, but it can also be pretty fucked up. I'm also thinking of like Taylor Swift. I feel like because the Eras tour, I see everybody talking about how she's bi, but she's never confirmed anything.
And I think there's this desire, and I understand the desire to be like, oh, I want her to be bi so badly. It would be such a huge win for visibility. I've had a crush on her. Like it's great. It's like, okay, I know you want this to be true, but you can't manifest someone else's sexuality. I know we're in the era of manifestation, but you can't manifest someone else being bi. I'm sorry about that.
And like all the that she dated, I forget the model's name, but like making up, you know, whole scenarios around that, and then calling out her like Lover album and performances because they saw that they said that was queer baiting, and it's like if you're not going to come out as bi, you can't like wear that in your music video, and it's just like so.
That's not what queer baiting means. That's literally not what it means. I'm sorry, like that's not it.
Yeah. It's just all over the place. But I'm glad that we touched on this because I think it's really important to this conversation. Is there anything else with Boyslut that you want to cover in this episode?
No, we covered so much. Again, it is out on May 9th. Also have, like, I'm doing a book tour. So if you follow me on social media, Zachary Zane _ Twitter and Instagram. Also my website, zacharyzane.com, though I need to update my tour schedule. But I'll be in New York, San Francisco, Boston, LA, Chicago, Nashville. Hopefully a city by you if you guys want to see me read and sign books.
Oh, I don't even remember it, so it's not even worth a tale. But someone said something at work today that could have been taken so sexually. And I tried not to go there because I'm at work and I'm trying to do less of that.
You're trying to do less of office slut.
Yeah, office slut. More of Boyslut with Zachary Zane. So thank you so much, Zachary Zane. I love saying your full name, for being on the podcast. It was so fun to finally chat with you. And thank you to our listeners for hanging out.
And this is a great episode to share with someone. This is really important information. It was a really fun conversation, really easy to understand. And Boyslut, I don't know why I said really easy to understand. I just feel like it was, I feel like we talked about like complicated things.
Slowly.
We talked slowly. So if you're dumb. No, I just feel like we talked about really like big topics, but it was really digestible and accessible. That's what I meant.
Oh my God. I'm going to say that to everyone now. After I finish a sentence, was that easy to understand? Okay.
So I feel like it's a very shareable bit. You can also head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify to rate, review, and subscribe to Honeydew Me. You can leave us a written review. What emoji should they leave if this is the episode that they write a written review for?
Ooh, I think there's a potion emojis for toxic.
Ooh, I like that.
Toxic chemical, you know?
Yeah, I like that.
Little potion.
Okay, so go ahead and leave that, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, we sure will. Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh. Bitch.